How's it going, everybody? My name is LuckyBunz. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the best electric-type Pokemon to power up in Pokemon GO. With that being said, let's jump straight into it. So first up, let's go over our Mega options. Now keep in mind, both of these Mega options aren't going to be as good compared to some of the Shadow and regular options that we have available, but I do always recommend having at least one Mega option in your party. Now as far as the best Mega option for the Electric-type category, that is going to be Mega Manectric with Thunder Fang plus Wild Charge. No legacy movesets, thankfully, which is always really nice to see. And the second best option is going to be Mega Ampharos with Volt Switch plus Zap Cannon. Now one big difference between these two and why you might want to have Mega Ampharos as well is going to be because it takes on the dual typing of Electric and Dragon, which means it's going to have better resistances in certain scenarios compared to Mega Manectric. Mega Pokemon aside though, let's talk about our actual best Pokemon in this category. That is going to be Shadow Raikou with Thunder Shock plus Wild Charge. Once again, no legacy moveset, so it's actually fantastic to see on a legendary Pokemon like this. Now I do really want to highlight how good this Pokemon actually is and how it's actually maintained its meta relevance for like the past few years, not even like the past few years. I think we got Shadow Raikou added into the game like at least 4 to 5 years ago, and it's still number 1. So if you can believe it, this guy is just phenomenal to power up. It's by far one of the best investments I think I've ever made. I was actually lucky enough to get a shiny Shadow Raikou from one of the raid rotations, and even though it didn't have like the best IVs, I still power that thing up to level 40, and I love using it against Rocket Grunts as well. With Volt Switch, it is fantastic, but in raid battles, you typically want to go with Thunder Shock for better DPS. Now, I do also want to highlight that Shadow Raikou has some niche play in the Open Ultra League, ranking in the top 70 right now, so you could also use it in that meta as well. Although I wouldn't really build this for the Open Ultra League, just given its main relevance in the raid/gym meta as well as for rocket battles. You want to power this thing up as much as possible. Now, following that, let's take a look at our next Pokemon, which actually isn't going to be a Shadow option, but rather a regular option. That Pokemon is going to be Zekrom with Charge Beam plus Fusion Bolt. Fusion Bolt is going to be a legacy moveset, technically a signature moveset for Zekrom. And, you know, compared to Wild Charge, there isn't a massive difference, so if you don't actually have Fusion Bolt, I would not recommend using an Elite TM on this guy, because you can definitely get away using Wild Charge. We did just recently have Zekrom available in raid battles during the Unova Tour, so most likely a lot of you guys actually have this guy with Fusion Bolt, but if you don't, it's not that big of a deal. Now, I do also want to mention that Zekrom in the Open Master League is currently the best Electric-type option you guys can go with, ranking in the top 25 currently. When it comes down to using this Pokemon in the Open Master League, you actually want to go with a different moveset though. It's going to be Dragon Breath plus Crunch and Wild Charge. Now, if you already have Fusion Bolt, I would not go removing that for Wild Charge. I mean, you definitely can use Fusion Bolt in the Open Master League. It's going to have different playability, so don't worry about it too much. It's still going to be fine. Following that, we're going to have Thunderous Therian form with Volt Switch plus Wild Bolt Storm. Wild Bolt Storm is going to be a signature moveset for it. Now, this is not the same comparison like Zekrom with Fusion Bolt and Wild Charge. If you don't have this moveset, it does make a much bigger difference. The second best moveset is going to be Thunderbolt, and there is a pretty big difference between the ER scale. So if you had to pick between the two, I would definitely recommend trying to prioritize Zekrom in terms of powering a Pokemon up, but if you want something different, Thundurus in its Therian form is going to be a great option. Okay, moving on, our next Pokemon is going to be Shadow Electivire with Thunder Shock plus Wild Charge. No legacy movesets here, thankfully, and as far as this Pokemon goes, it's going to rank a bit lower than Thundurus Therian form, but it's practically on the same level as Zekrom and Thundurus Therian, both with their legacy movesets, so this is a great option to invest into. But the downside here is that Shadow Pokemon cost more to invest into, and you can always Lucky Trade Zekrom or even Thundurus in its Therian form. That makes it a bit better to go with in my opinion, just because you can conserve more resources, so yes, you can go with Shadow Electivire if you have a really good IV spread and you want something different, but if I had to pick between the three of them, I'd definitely go with the former two. Now keep in mind, you can also use Shadow Electivire in the Open Great League as well as in the Open Ultra League, so you could technically build an Ultra League spread, power it up to around level 34, level 35-ish, and then also use that as a raid attacker as well. So if you want to get dual functionality out of this guy, I think that's going to be the best option to go for. I was actually lucky enough to get a 98% IV Shadow Electabuzz from Rocket Grunts, and so I'm eventually going to max mine out, but in most scenarios, I think going with the Ultra League spread just makes the most sense. I also want to mention that Mega Manectric ranks slightly below Shadow Electivire, but it's going to rank a little bit above a Xurkitree, which is going to be our next Pokemon that we're going to talk about here. So Xurkitree is going to be an Ultra Beast Pokemon. You want to have ideally Thunder Shock plus Discharge as the moveset. No legacy moves there, which again is really nice for this guy. And overall, Xurkitree is kind of a glass best cannon, but it's definitely a really fun Pokemon to go with. Discharge is a super spammy moveset, so compared to some of the other options out there, especially Zekrom with Fusion Bolt or Thunderous Therian with Wall Bolt Storm, I feel like this is a really good option to go with as well. It's actually really nice because for the electric type category, I feel like most of the Pokemon that we're talking about right now are all really close together. There's not like a drastic difference between their power potential. Like, there's a small difference, don't get me wrong, but overall you can definitely go with any of the options I've mentioned so far for the Raid/Gym meta. Now following that, we have 2 more Shadow options to go for that you guys can also use in various metas as well. The next option is going to be Shadow Zapdos with Thundershock plus Thunderbolt. Thundershock is going to be a legacy fast move. This was a raid exclusive moveset if I'm not mistaken. So if you don't actually have this moveset on your Shadow Zapdos, the next best option would be Charge Beam, which is about 2 points lower. Given that most people actually end up having a lot of extra elite fast TMs, I don't think this is really that big of a deal, so if you want to give it the elite fast TM, you definitely can. Now before you actually decide to do that though, I should also mention its relevance in the PvP metas as well. It's going to be top 90 in the Great League, top 60 in the Ultra League, and then top 60 in the Open Master League. Now in the Open Master League, like, being top 60 makes a much bigger deal compared to the Great League and Ultra League formats, so ideally the best place this would probably would be in the Open Ultra League. So if you get a good IV spread, and this would ideally require you to do the Shadow Legendary raids, and believe me, we don't get these very often, so if you actually happen to have a good PvP IV spread for your Shadow Zapdos, and for those who don't know, the IV floor from Shadow Legendary raids is going to be 666, which makes it much easier to get a good PvP IV spread. I mean, it's not going to be perfect, right? It's not going to be like 0, 15, 15, but 6, 15, 15, or like 7, 15, 14, or whatever it is, like, those are pretty good. It's definitely a lot better than getting it from regular raid battles where the IV floor is going to be 10, 10, 10. So when it comes down to it, that's going to be my personal recommendation. Shadow Zapdos for the Open Ultra League I think is going to be the best place for it, because then you can use it in both the Raid/Gym meta as well as for PvP. Now finally, our last Pokemon is going to be Shadow Magnezone with Volt Switch plus Wild Charge. No legacy movesets here, and this is a really solid Pokemon. It doesn't rank as well as it used to in the Open Ultra League, but that's going to be where its main relevance lies as far as PvP goes. As far as the Raid/Gym meta is concerned, it's still going to be a solid option, and kind of similar to how we talked about Electivire and Zapdos, I think its best place is going to be using it in the Open Ultra League for that dual functionality. Now personally speaking, I was actually using my Shadow Magnezone in both the Open Ultra League as well as the Raid/Gym meta for quite some time. Since then, I've been able to upgrade my teams quite a bit, so I don't use this guy anymore in the Raid/Gym meta, but for a long time I definitely did, and I think that's the beauty of some of these Pokemon, like Electivire, Zapdos, Magnezone. You can take advantage of 2 different metas, and I always think that's going to be the best way to actually value your Stardust. Overall, when it comes down to this category, I feel like we have a very healthy mix of Shadows as well as regular options, and for the regular options, you guys can lucky trade those to save even more Stardust. But of course, we're not done yet. I also want to go over some PvP options you guys might want to invest into. Currently, some of the best options that we have available right now. One of the best options right now that you guys can invest into as far as PvP goes for the Open Great League is going to be Morpeko. It's going to rank in the top 30 right now with Thundershock plus Aura Wheel and Psychic Fangs. Now for those of you unfamiliar with how this Pokemon actually works, it's going to change forms every single turn. So it's going to go from its electric type form being full belly mode into its hangry mode form, which is going to be a dark type mode. The moveset Aura Wheel is also going to change its typing every turn, going from electric to dark, and this is pretty much to complement its form changes as well. And this has made Morpeko a really deadly Pokemon in the Open Great League. It is very frustrating to deal with, but if you're the one who's actually running it, you're probably going to have a lot of fun. To my knowledge, the only way to actually get Morpeko in the game currently has been through field research as well as from GBL encounters, so this usually means that the IV floor is going to be 10, 10, 10, which also means you want to ideally mirror trade this with somebody else to get a better IV spread for PvP. Personally speaking, I can't wait to get my hands on a better IV spread for this guy because I really want to run this in the Open Great League. Now following that, our next Pokemon that I want to talk about is going to be Emolga, which is going to rank in the top 50 for the Open Great League with Thundershock plus Acrobatics and Discharge. Now as far as accessibility goes, I feel like Emolga has been featured quite frequently in the last year, so there's a good chance you guys might have one of these with a decent IV spread. Next up though, we're going to have Stunfisk, which has relevance in the Open Great League in the top 40 and also in the Open Ultra League in the top 40. Now as far as the Open Great League goes, you want to go with a typical IV spread for PvP, but for the Open Ultra League you actually want to go with the Hundo. The main reason for this is because Stunfisk doesn't actually make it past 2500 CP in the Open Ultra League. Stunfisk has been pretty relevant in PvP for quite some time, so I don't expect it to be replaced anytime soon. Next up, we're going to have Togedemaru with Thundershock plus Fell Stinger and Wild Charge. This is going to be relevant in the Open Great League in the top 50 and the Open Ultra League in the top 90. Now our final Pokemon is going to be Lantern ranking in the top 100 for the Open Great League. The reason why I like this Pokemon so much is because it has a dual typing of water and electric, which means its resistances are really solid. Now to be fair, Lantern did used to rank much better in the Open Great League, but I still think it's going to be a great option to go for. That pretty much covers all the PvP options I wanted to go over. There wasn't like that many compared to some of the other videos, but we do actually have one more Pokemon I wanted to talk about, and that is going to be Gigantamax Toxtricity. So this is going to be applicable for the Max Battle format, and this is really the only place this Pokemon is actually relevant. Even if you max this guy out, it's not going to be relevant as a raid attacker, so, you know, there's not really any point using it there. But as far as its G-Max form goes, this is the best Electric-type option in the game for that format. But the only downside here is that you're going to need to have a lot of candy to upgrade the max moves. Ideally, you do want to focus on getting the max attack to level 3, which is going to be a lot of candy and then at least like 50 extra large candy, so it's a pretty significant investment. And given how inaccessible this Pokemon currently is in Pokemon GO, it's probably going to be a while before we see it back in G-Max raids. But that doesn't mean that you can't get your hands on one from a lucky trade. I mean, because we did have the Go Wild area back in November of 2024, so there's probably a lot of people out there who actually have extras that they would be willing to part with. I can almost guarantee you're going to use this Pokemon quite a bit once you get your hands on it, so if you already have one, great, try to work on getting that to G-Max 3. If you don't, then definitely try to get your hands on one from a lucky trade. With that being said though, that pretty much covers all the best options you guys can power up for the electric type category in Pokemon Go, but if you still want to check out some more content, I'm going to recommend these two videos next.